Artist, Scientist, Teacher, Assessment 2. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. Artography explores the interconnection between arts and education. It stands for artist, researcher, and teacher. Springay et al. Provide an insightful reflection on artography, saying that it can be considered a compilation of previous discourse and literature surrounding arts-based education, in which learning becomes an active pursuit and construction of meaning. Artography gives students opportunities to explore and research their world through the creation of art. The first creative task I engaged in explored light. In this task, I combined the primary colours to create secondary colours. The medium I used was watercolour on standard A3 paper. While doing this task, a class discussion was occurring on how light travels and how we see colour. I also did my own research and learnt that light travels in waves and can be either absorbed or reflected. Light is made up of different wavelengths, and each colour of the rainbow has a different wavelength. Certain wavelengths will be absorbed by the object and others will be reflected. The light that is reflected is the colour you see. For instance, this butterfly is reflecting blue light and absorbing every other colour, which is why we see it as blue. This kind of activity would be highly engaging in a classroom, particularly with younger children, as it is a hands-on and accessible way to learn about colours. They can experiment with what colours they use and create, allowing them to create their own meaning of what they are learning. This way, students are co-constructing their learning rather than being passive recipients. Another activity I did was called Light and Shadow. I placed my paper in the shadow of a tree and used a marker to outline the shapes it created. This activity, like before, explores the concept of light. Shadows are formed when opaque objects block the light. Opaque objects are objects which do not let any light through. In this case, the leaves of the tree are opaque, which created a pattern of shadows on the paper. I really enjoyed this activity as it put shadows into a different perspective. Usually when I see shadows, I don't think too much about the scattered, irregular shapes they often create. However, in this case, as I outlined them, I paid more attention to the shadows and saw them differently to how I usually do. Nature has always had a place in art. While much art is a direct representation of nature, this can also be said in the way that the observer perceives things. An observer's aesthetic experience, whether it be of nature or art, will always be swayed by their own personal experiences and thoughts. Looking back, I wish that I had chosen different colours, as I don't think these are aesthetically pleasing, and the purple didn't turn out how I wanted it. The final product is immensely different to what I started with. This shines a light on the importance of perspective in art. While geometrically both images are almost the same, the context, colour and presentation of each create such a difference in the final product. The next activity explored snowflakes. Snowflakes form when a falling water droplet freezes onto a dust or pollen particle. As it falls, more water clings and freezes onto it, forming an ice crystal with six-fold symmetry. For context, this is what my art should have looked like, and this is what my art did look like. Even though I wasn't completely successful, I still had fun while doing it, and I learned a bit about snowflakes in the process. Especially with younger kids, it is important to be reminded that art isn't always perfect, and there is a lot more to be learnt from the process of creating rather than the finished product. As you can see, the snowflakes didn't turn out perfectly. Some are better than others, but I noticed that the bigger ones were much easier to do than the smaller ones. The glue ended up spreading and didn't stay where I put it, which is why the shapes aren't perfect. The final activity was called cyanotype printing. The cyanotype prints were made using the fabric that was coated in chemicals which react to UV. When I put the fabric in the sunlight, the leaves are supposed to block the UV, creating interesting patterns when the fabric is washed. Power and Klopper state that many teachers avoid creative arts education because of time restrictions or a crowded curriculum. However, creative arts can be implemented across many KLAs as it is known to improve academic performance. Again, the results weren't perfect because it was raining and windy. However, it allowed me to reflect on the intersection between science and art as we created a beautiful art piece using scientific principles. To conclude, I loved completing these activities in the tutorials as it was a change from the usual theory-based approaches of university. I also learned of the ways in which arts and science intersect and how this can be used in my own teaching practice.